The Legis-lately series with Mayor Lee Harris is created by the Office of Mayor Lee Harris. This episode will feature a conversation with State Representative and Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, John Ray Clemmons. He is joining Mayor Harris today to share a state-level perspective on their party's approach to the intersection of policy and politics as they relate to the issues impacting Tennesseans, as well as what gives him hope about the future of Memphis, Shelby County, and Tennessee. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the podcast publisher or New Memphis. Let's get started.
Hey, John Ray Clemmons, you're on Legis-lately with Lee Harris. And I am in Memphis. I'm the Shelby County mayor. We appreciate you for being here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So in Memphis, and I know you're in Nashville today, in Memphis, we've recently celebrated 901 Day. And so that's quite the celebration in Memphis. It's only emerged a few years ago. And it's really just a celebration of all things Memphis, 901 being our area code. And so we're all in a festive mode of mind here in Memphis and Shelby County still, even though 901 Day has passed. But glad to have you, because I know you've traveled to Memphis many times and traveled across the state. And this is really, I'm hopeful that this will be a conversation about what that means to travel across the state and the kinds of things that someone like you is hearing right now in 2025 at this juncture in our country's history. You know, as a person in the South and someone who's served for quite a while now, that Tennessee is a great place, but that one of the major challenges in Tennessee is that we don't have a healthy and fair debate. And so, so sometimes folks feel like they're not heard, and maybe some issues are not brought to the fore. And so I always struggle with that in my role is, what can I do to make sure that everyone is heard and that we really are not a state that is leaning too heavily to one side or the other, because that's not where Tennessee is culturally speaking anyway. So maybe we'll just start there. What have you found as you've traveled across the state, and how do we go about this process of making sure we create platforms for a healthy and fair debate in a southern state like Tennessee?
Yeah, well, first of all, happy 901 Day. That's
Thank you.
That's a huge day. As you know, I love Memphis. I get to Memphis as often as possible. I attended law school down there and absolutely love that city. I think it's got more going for it than almost any other city in the state of Tennessee. But we celebrated 901 Day here in Nashville as well yesterday on the holiday.
It's great.
But to answer your question, I think Tennessee is and has always been very much in the middle, politically speaking. I don't think the districts or the elections right now evidence that, but as we travel the state of Tennessee in rural communities, urban communities, suburban communities, what I hear is people really just concerned about the issues. We don't hear a lot about the knee-jerk issues or the things may get a lot of clicks on some websites or social media, but people are just concerned. Most people just want to, get up, go to work, support their family, put food on the table, get access to health care. And that's what we're hearing around the state of Tennessee. I think people just want some common sense, and they really don't want to have to worry about politics the way that, most of you and I may think it and live it. But, most people just want to live their lives. And I think that's where most Tennesseans fall on the spectrum.
Hey, so let's get straight to some of these issues that Tennesseans are talking about. And of course, we know some of the big ones are education, healthcare, and maybe even infrastructure. But let's just start with education. What's the state of affairs in Tennessee right now? And what are you hearing from Tennesseans as you make stops across the state and serve as a state official?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I mean, public education in the state of Tennessee has been under attack for well over a decade now. We've seen a systemic and strategic effort to dismantle public confidence in public schools, drastic underfunding of our public schools in all 95 counties. And really, teachers make less today than they did in 2013 on average, when you account for inflation, and that's truly problematic, because public education is the great equalizer. That is the single best source of opportunity for every child in the state of Tennessee. So when you attack public education, you're attacking families, you're attacking your local economies, and you're really doing a lot of harm to how great this state is and can be. We're hearing a lot of complaints about that. The voucher bill that, Governor Bill Lee loves to brag about being his legacy, and a lot of this money that's being pulled out of our public schools and put into private hands. We're hearing a lot of concerns about that. We're hearing a lot of concerns about blaming teachers, for every problem in our community and their inability to solve every problem that comes into that schoolhouse from the community. We just have to do a better job of respecting teachers and supporting public education for the benefit of every child, because it's all about providing children with opportunity, and that it starts in the classroom.
Absolutely. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about healthcare and Medicaid or TennCare in Tennessee. I was with you on your last stop to Winchester, which was a great stop, Winchester, Tennessee. And I know that there were a lot of folks from that community, which is in a beautiful community, it's part of Franklin County. A lot of folks in that community were worried about some of Tennessee's ability to get the federal dollars that it deserves to fund and continue to support Medicaid, which again is called TennCare here. So what are you hearing, and what can you share out about those conversations?
Yeah, so people statewide are really concerned. Their hospitals have closed. I believe 22 hospitals and clinics have closed across the state of Tennessee since we refused to expand Medicaid here in Tennessee in the form of the Medicaid reimbursement. TennCare is our waiver program here in Tennessee, started back during Governor Ned Ray McWhorter. And we turned away tens of billions of dollars that was our money. That was our tax dollars we paid into the federal government that should have come back to the state of Tennessee in the form of a reimbursement. That has created a whole host of issues with regards to uninsured individuals who have to rely on emergency room medical care instead of preventative care. Hospitals have closed in rural communities across the state. And now we're seeing even more cuts at the federal level, which, the state is in financial straits right now. Even though we've doubled the budget in 15 years, that money's not going where it needs to. And so Tennesseans are going to lose access to health care. They've already been in that coverage gap with regards to insurance. And now we're just going to see more hospitals and clinics close and more people losing coverage, which is going to detrimentally impact every community, and it's all connected. It's not going to impact our local economies. It's going to impact families. And, when you have a sick parent, that impacts a child's ability to get to and from school. So it's impacting education, their ability to continue working in the local economy. I mean, all this stuff has fingers that reach far and wide. And so these cuts of the federal government are really going to create and cause a lot of harm across the state of Tennessee in every community.
Hey, why do you think Tennessee hasn't expanded Medicaid? I mean, because, back in the day when I was, served in the state assembly 2014 and 2018, and back in the day when there was a run at expanding Medicaid and take those federal dollars off the table, the big fear was that a lot of folks on the conservative side of the aisle thought they would be aligning themselves with Barack Obama. And they didn't want to align themselves with Barack Obama. And so they decided, to pass on those dollars. But Barack Obama's long gone at this point. And, we've got a Republican president. We've got a Republican governor. And the vast majority of states in America, I mean, Tennessee might be one of, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 states. It couldn't be that many more of those states in America that hasn't expanded Medicaid. And so even though a lot of states were hesitant back in the day, 2014 to 2018 to expand, a lot of those states have now taken those dollars off the table. But Tennessee is one of the handful that still refuses to take federal dollars to support the Medicaid program and provide health care for individuals. Why would we be so, paralyzed today?
Yeah, it really makes no sense. I mean, even if you just look at it from a fiscal standpoint, it makes no fiscal sense whatsoever, because all that's happened is all the tens of billions of dollars that would have come back into the state of Tennessee for the benefit of individuals and local economies has been spread around the country to other states. And so our tax dollars are being spent elsewhere. And that's why it really makes no sense from a fiscal standpoint. And, you and I came into the legislature at the same time. And in fact, our first experience in the state legislature, if you recall, was a special session called by Governor Bill Haslam, because he rebranded basically Medicaid expansion under his own title, and was seeking to do that. But he had to do that because some Republican legislators, including one who spent a little time in prison from Shelby County recently, and Jeremy Durham, who has also been in trouble with the law, passed a bill that said the governor can't unilaterally, enter our state into that waiver program. And so it fell to the legislature. It required legislative approval. And so we still are under that law, still requires legislative approval. And I've had legislators just tell me, when I ask them why, with making the fiscal argument, making the humanitarian argument, the policy argument, they still say Barack Obama. And as you pointed out, President Obama hasn't been in the White House for some time. And it stopped making sense a long time ago. And it's really harming Tennessee families as a direct result of just this obtuseness that just continues to plague the Capitol.
Yeah, and lately it feels like there's now some remarks coming out of Tennessee state capitals around wanting to think twice about taking federal money for education. And I don't know if those comments were intended to be serious, and so that we should be watchful of that, or was that just the kind of the hum that goes along with the usual political talk?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they say such wild things up here. It's hard to know what to take serious and what not to. You have to take it all serious because it's such a significant threat to the state of Tennessee. The Speaker of the House is the one who was most recently talking about turning away federal education funding, which, really it creates a lot of problems statewide, especially when we just passed a voucher program that's going to completely destroy our state, eat up our state budget and send us into financial crisis. It's going to consume over $1 billion a year here in the next couple of years. And that's a recurring cost, of course. And so to lose any federal dollars, again, it's our tax money. It's just going to be spent to other states. And if we turn it away, it's less money for Shelby County schools, Wilson County schools, Metro schools, Cott County schools. That all flows downhill. And what's happened now is the state has put itself into a financial predicament due to fiscal recklessness of Haslam and Bill Lee, especially Bill Lee, under this GOP supermajority. The state doesn't really have any more revenue to invest in education because the vouchers are going to consume what was left. And now they're going to start chipping into that general budget for schools, and it's all flowing downhill. So counties statewide are going to have to pick up more of that financial burden. They're going to have to pick up a higher percentage of their education costs. And as you know, these education systems in these counties are the biggest employer in a lot of counties. So they're either going to have to raise local taxes or they're going to start cutting jobs.
No, I think that's right. And that, I've got firsthand experience there. Like some of the stuff that stays in Nashville doesn't stay in Nashville. And as a local official, that really puts pressure on us to raise property taxes. And so, hopefully this won't end up like that. But often local officials are left holding the bag as the state recedes from an area. If they recede from an area, well, that area doesn't go away. And so, speaking of which, that brings us to some of the specialized care needs, and I'm sure Nashville has some specialized care needs, and all across the state. Certainly in Memphis we do. And when I think about specialized care needs, I'm talking about your long-term health care needs, long-term care, so your nursing homes, but also your mental health access, your mental health care access. That's also kind of specialized service. You know, in the past several weeks, we've made stops in Brownsville and Bolivar, and I know that's something that's come up. I guess the way I would ask this, is there any chance in your mind that the state of Tennessee might get back into this business and invest in some of the specialized care needs that are getting, more pervasive at this point? So any chance they'll get back into investing in mental health care access, or really being a partner to make sure that there's more long-term kind of nursing facilities that are really high quality available for more Tennesseans?
Well, I would love to say yes, but I won't say that all my colleagues up here are ignorant to these issues and the challenges facing our citizens in that respect. But the reality is that we are out of money. Even though they've doubled the state budget in 15 years, like I said, they've cut revenues at a higher clip, and so we're in a financial predicament up here for the first time, really seriously, since Governor Sunquist left office. And so, while we may acknowledge some of these things, and those are real issues, I don't know where the state's going to get the money to invest in them, especially with the federal cuts that are being made to Medicare, Medicaid, and the like. But the reality is, as you and I both know, the elderly population, over 65 population in this state, is going to exceed the younger population here in the next couple of years. And so with that comes a lot of challenges. It comes with not only needs for long-term care, like nursing homes and other things for older citizens, but we have this, as you mentioned, this ongoing mental health crisis, and it's a serious issue. And I've worked for years to achieve mental health parity in the state of Tennessee on the insurance coverage sides. But our country's way behind when it comes to mental health care and access to coverage for mental health care, because we don't require any insurance company to provide that coverage. We only mandate that they provide an equal level of coverage if they provide that as part of their existing policy. And so, we've got a lot of people out there who are struggling to make ends meet. Costs are high. Grocery prices are soaring. The cost of beef's 80% increase right now. And so, Tennessee families are stretched thin, and you've got these special costs that are affecting a lot of families, whether it be long-term care for a loved one, a parent, a grandparent, or they've got a child or, someone with a mental health issue. It's just making the financial strain on Tennessee families a lot harder. And unfortunately, the state, due to fiscal mismanagement and recklessness up here, I don't know where they're going to find the money to invest in those types of things, but we certainly should.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears just a little bit. And as I say, kind of one of the things that I'm most concerned about is making sure that this state, along with a lot of other states that are like our state, is able to have a healthy and fair debate. And for that to be possible, you really got to have two political parties that are viable and that are active within the state. And so I'm going to ask you to just put your Democrat hat on and just explain to me what's the path forward for some of these issues that have really caught Democrats flat-footed. And so one that comes to mind is immigration, right? Obviously, immigration is when we started, doing this kind of business, I guess, let's just go back 10 years for now. When we started in this business 10 years ago, we know that immigration was not a top 5 issue for Tennesseans, probably not even a top 10 issue for Tennesseans. But it's certainly a top 3 issue at this juncture for many Americans, whether it's a border state or not a border state. So that's been a dramatic shift. And I don't know that Democrats are participating in that conversation. Maybe we're there, but I don't know that we are winning the debate on immigration. I don't know if we even have a unified approach, but you're a Democratic elected official and have been doing this business and have witnessed this shift. So maybe I'll ask that. Do you think there has been a shift from this being a low level issue with kind of low awareness to now this is a pretty important issue, and Democrats, are they winning on the issue? Do they have a message on the issue? What can we do to get into this to make sure that there is two sides to this, or maybe there don't need to be? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question, we're clearly not winning on the issue, and I think it's been a serious issue when you stand back and look at it from a policy standpoint. Our nation's immigration system has been broken for some time, and that's not new. And what has changed is that one political party has decided to kind of weaponize the issue by demonizing individuals. That I think that is what has changed. But all along, our immigration system in this country has been broken. The hurdles that individuals have to go through, who are actually trying to follow the law, to become citizens, who come to the land of opportunity for them and their families, is a really labyrinthian process. And, if you think back, you remember President George W. Bush acknowledged this as a serious issue, a broken system. And unfortunately, his own party wouldn't get behind his efforts to reform, to try to fix the system. President Obama tried it briefly, and so on. So this goes back, decades, and it's not something new from a policy standpoint. And what I get, really irritated by is we've got federal officials in D.C. who represent Tennessee. Your Marsha Blackburns, your John Roses, your Andy Ogle, some of these people who talk about immigration and the way that they've weaponized it. But my position is, look, Marsha Blackburn's been in D.C. since 2002. She hasn't lifted a finger to try to fix a broken immigration system. So to the extent immigration is a problem in the state of Tennessee, or it's an issue that requires to be at the top of every political issue poll, it's her fault. And those who have served in the U.S. Congress or the U.S. Senate representing Tennessee who haven't done anything to try to fix the system. And in fact, she opposed and tried to railroad her own president's plan back in the day. So, you look at it from a political standpoint and a policy standpoint. But it is definitely something that Democrats must acknowledge is a broken system in Washington, D.C., and that's where it has to be fixed. To the extent they use it in state level campaigns, it's just, again, more of that trickle down political strategy. But this is a federal issue that requires real focus at the federal level.
Are Democrats winning the public safety debate? And How do they win the public safety debate? I'm asking because that's what's happening right now. Is there's a public safety debate, and I don't know who's up, who's down. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a tough one as well. I mean, the public safety debate, you had two different narratives going on with public safety. You got the traditional Republican tough on crime, mantra and catchphrase they consistently use, and Democrats meanwhile are looking at ways to prevent crime on the front end by investing in children and reducing adverse childhood experiences, addressing childhood hunger, domestic abuse, those types of things that lead and ultimately result in juvenile crime and crime on writ large. And so we look at it from two different ways, and whether tough on crime as a catchphrase sells better or not. I mean, apparently it is, but that's not the solution, because when you just talk about locking people up and going back to these 1994 policies of truth in sentencing and so forth, like we have recently, there's no data to suggest that reduces crime. Increasing criminal penalties for crime, there's no data to support that it limits or lessens crime rates. But if you address the societal problems that result in crime, you not only prevent crime on the front end, you prevent harm to Tennessee families and Tennesseans who are victims of crime. And that's the big deal with the Republicans. Okay, you lock somebody up, but guess what? Somebody's already dead. Somebody's already injured. That crime's already been committed. And, they use that for a whole lot of excuses to pass other policies that are not helpful at all. But I guess, addressing both ends of it is the way to go. But I think Democrats do a poor job of talking about how to really fight crime on the front end.
Yeah. So we're running out of time, but I've got to ask about these National Guard troops. So Tennessee, according to the Hill, I mean, there are lots of different ways to look at crime. But according to crime incidents, according to The Hill, Tennessee has 2 cities that have a relatively high incidence of crime, Memphis and Nashville. And just recently, our Senator Marsha Blackburn, according to media reports here, endorsed sending National Guard troops to Memphis. And so I guess the question is, what's the Democratic response to some of that? I think Governor Pritzker said something recently, and I'll just throw that out there, put it on the table, and see your reaction. He says send FBI agents and other folks that are, federal resources that are adept at dealing with domestic populations, but don't send military-like assets. So what do you think, John Ray Clemmons?
Well, I agree with Governor Pritzker. I mean, you're using the National Guard to be law enforcement. The National Guard receives no training in law enforcement, so it's wholly inappropriate to use individuals who have no training in that area to march in the streets and give this military presence. This reeks of really bad instances of history when you have military marching in the streets. If you really want to address crime, I think you should rely on local officials to say whether or not they need help. If their funds have been cut by the state of Tennessee, counties in Tennessee should be able to request assistance. And that type of assistance should look like individuals and experts who are trained to address crime in high crime areas, where the FBI, more police presence in some of these counties, if that is what they determine is necessary. But Marsha Blackburn talking about she wants military in the streets in a community in which she barely steps foot is just more political posturing from someone who does not doesn't really know right from wrong in a lot of instances, and it's more reflective of her type of shallow thinking rather than what type of signal that sends to the people of Shelby County, Memphis.
Very good. Last question. We've talked about some challenges, but what brings you hope, or what are you most proud of?
Well, I'm most proud of being able to fight on behalf of Tennesseans. I kind of, jokingly get called a fighter sometimes, but I think our values are worth fighting for. And I'm very proud of the fact that we don't back down from any fight that needs to be fought on behalf of the people of Tennessee. And our priorities have remained the same. We're focused on Tennessee values and representing Tennessee families first by trying to improve the quality of life of every Tennessee family, and improving and strengthening public education, providing access to health care to the people of Tennessee who require it, building good infrastructure and modernizing our infrastructure systems across the state of Tennessee, and really addressing the issues that most people care about and staying focused on those. Now, we have to play defense to a lot of nonsense that consumes a lot of the airspace these days, but I'm really proud of the fact that we stay on task. We keep up the fight on behalf of the people of Tennessee, and I know that this pendulum's going to swing when people wake up and realize what's being done to them rather than for them by this Republican supermajority.
Well, very well said. I've enjoyed this conversation very much. Thank you for joining us, State Representative John Ray Clemmons, and also Chairman of the House Democratic Caucus. Thanks very much for tuning in. This is Legis-lately.